Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinatha, Radha Gopinatha Shri Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Nashta Prayeshu Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 3, Chapter number 6, Creation of the Universal Form, Text number 1. Vishiruvacha Ititasam swasaktinam Ititasam swasaktinam Satinam asametya saha Satinam asametya saha Prasuptaloka tantranam Prasuptaloka tantranam Nisamya gatim ishvaraha Nisamya gatim ishvaraha Rishiruvacha Ititasam susaktinam Satinam asametya saha Prasuptaloka tantranam Nisamya gatim ishvaraha Vishiruvacha Ititasam susaktinam Satinam asametya saha Prasuptaloka tantranam Nisamya gatim ishvaraha Vishiruvacha Ititasam susaktinam Satinam asametya saha Prasuptaloka tantranam Prasuptaloka tantranam Timishvara Drishiruvacha Ititasam susaktinam Satinam asametya saha Prasuptaloka tantranam Nisamyam gatimishvara Rishiruvacha. The Rishi Maitreya said, Iti, thus, tasam, there, swasaktinam, own potency, satinam, so situated, asametya, without combination, saha, he, the Lord, prasupta, suspended, lokatantranam, in the universal creations, nisamya, hearing, gatim, progress, ishvaraha, the Lord. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Chanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The Rishi Maitreya said, the Lord thus heard about the suspension of the progressive creative functions of the universe due to the non-combination of His potencies, such as the Mahatattva. Purport. There is nothing wanting in the creation of the Lord. All the potencies are there in a dormant state, but unless they are combined by the will of the Lord, nothing can progress. The suspended progressive work of creation can only be revived by the direction of the Lord. The next verse, text 2, Kala samyam tada devim bibraj chaktim urukrama trayovim sati tatvanam ganam yugapad avishat. Translation. The Supreme Powerful Lord then simultaneously entered into the 23 elements with the goddess Kali, His external energy, who alone amalgamates all the different elements. Purport, text 2, the ingredients of matter are counted as 23. The total material energy, false ego, sound, touch, form, taste, smell, earth, water, fire, air, sky, eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin, hand, leg, evacuating organ, genital, speech, and mind. All are combined together by the influence of time and are again dissolved in the course of time. Time, therefore, is the energy of the Lord and acts in her own way by the direction of the Lord. This energy is called Kali and is represented by the dark destructive goddess, generally worshipped by persons influenced by the mode of darkness or ignorance in material existence. In the Vedic hymn, this process is described as Mula Prakritir Avikritir Mahadhyadhyay Prakriti Vikritayaha Sapta Sodasakas Tu Vikaro Na Prakritir Na Vikriti Purushaha. The energy which acts as material nature is a combination of 23 ingredients. The energy which acts as material nature in a combination of 23 ingredients is not the final source of creation. The Lord enters into the elements and applies his energy called Kali. In all other Vedic scriptures, the same principle is accepted. In the Brahma Samhita 5.35, it is stated, Ekopyaso rachetum jagadanda kotim yakchakti rasti jagadanda chaya yadantaha andantarasta paramano chayantarastam govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is the original personality of Godhead. By his partial plenary expansion, Mahavishnu, he enters into material nature, and then into each and every universe as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and then as Kshiradakashaya Vishnu, into all the elements, including every atom of matter. Such manifestations of cosmic creation are innumerable, both in the universes and in the individual atoms. Similarly, this is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10.42. Atava bahunaitena kim nyatena thavarjuna vistabyam idam kritsnam ekam sena stito jagat. O Arjuna, there is no necessity of your knowing about my innumerable energies which act in various ways. I enter into the material creation by my partial planetary expansion, Paramatma or the Supersoul, in all the universes and in all the elements thereof, and thus the work of creation goes on. The wonderful activities of material nature are due to Lord Krishna, and thus he is the final cause or the ultimate cause of all causes. Text number 1, again, the Rishi Maitreya said, the Lord thus heard about the suspension of the progressive creative functions of the universe due to the non-combination of his potencies such as the Mahatattva. Text 2, the Supreme Powerful Lord then simultaneously entered into the 23 elements with the goddess Kali, his external energy, who alone amalgamates all the different elements. Om Jnanatimurandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpataro Vyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we finished chapter 5. of the third canto yesterday, Vidura's talks with Maitreya, with the demigods ending their prayers to the Lord, asking him to kindly give knowledge and the potency so that they can render service to the Lord in the different departments of subsequent creation. So the demigods were created after all the different elements were created, 23 in number, as mentioned in text number 2. Purport, Prabhupada says the 23 are the Mahatattva, the false ego, you got the Tanmatra, the 5 of them, sound, touch, taste, form, smell, and then you have the Pancha Mahabhuta, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and earth, water, fire, air, and ether, or also known as sky. Then you have the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, which is the ear, eye, nose, touch, skin. Then you have the active senses, the karmendriyas, the hand, leg, evacuating organ, genital, speech, and then you have the mind. And later on in the third canto, Kapila Dev will then talk about how there are Kapila Dev will then talk about Sankhya philosophy, and there he'll talk about, actually there's also 24. You can include in this list ego, mind, intelligence, and the contaminated intelligence. So then that comes to 24. Also, you can make it 25 by including the soul, 26 including the super soul. So Sankhya philosophy is breaking up this material universe into smaller units for easier understanding of their combinations. Anyway, so once these 23 elements, as mentioned here, have come into existence, so does the predominating deities of all of the senses. As Ghanshampur was mentioning, it's very easy to understand who is in charge of what, just as when we want to see, we need light, therefore we need Surya, the sun god, and so on and so forth. To hear, we need the Dik Devatas, or the demigods in charge of the different directions. So each of these demigods then pray to the Lord, because they appear and they don't know what needs to be done. Rather, they don't know how to cooperate with each other, so things are done appropriately. So they pray, and at the end of their prayers they beseech the Lord to please guide them in performing their activities. So in this chapter 6, Subodhini talks about how the Lord, Karanadakashaya Vishnu, then enters into the universes as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. So when he enters into the universes, it's mentioned that he enters along with Goddess Kali, his external energy, who alone amalgamates all the different elements. So he appears as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and later on in this chapter, the universal form, Virat Rupa, and Kali is there assisting him in his service, rather assisting her in serving him in creating the universe. So in text number 1, the Lord thus heard about the suspension of the progressive creative functions of the universe due to the non-combination of his potencies, such as the Mahatattva. And knowing this, he enters into the universe. The core, or the main understanding here is that nothing happens without the will of the Lord. Because we think when creation happens, or our understanding of creation, wherever it may come from, maybe from Abrahamic traditions due to our upbringing in particular culture, or our understanding in other different cultures, that the Lord just simply creates and leaves. That's it. He just creates the world and that's it. But actually Bhagavatam is showing that every single stage of the material universe's transformation, the Lord's involved. The Lord is required to sanction such activities or transformations for the material creation to function. And that is meant to leave an impression in our consciousness that actually everything that is done in the material world has to be sanctioned by the Lord first. Even material nature will not act unless she's sanctioned. Her activities are sanctioned by the Lord. But material nature is so much in sync or in synchronization with the Lord that when the Lord desires, she immediately carries it out. So, parasya shaktir vivideva shuyate swabhaviki jnana bhala kriya cha. So the Lord energies, whatever he wants, na tasya karyam karanam cha vidyate, he has nothing to do. Na tasya karyam karanam cha vidyate, na tat samas chabhyadikascha jishyate. There's no one equal to him or greater than him, asama urdhva. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shuyate. He has many variegated energies. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shuyate. They are known various energies that he has. Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriya Cha. And everything he wants performed is done by these energies, specifically Bala, Kriya and Gyan. And we see something similar here, that through the Kriya, Jnana and the Kriya, Jnana and Dravya Shakti, thank you. Yeah, so these three Shaktis, he's manifesting the 23 elements from the Mahatattva. Okay, so in the second purport, Prabhupada quotes the verse from Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, Atava bahunaitena kim gyatena tavarjuna vishtabhyamidam kritsnam ekam senastito jagat. So in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also gives Arjuna an understanding. Just as Maitreya is giving Vidura an understanding of the material cosmic creation, there he's giving Arjuna understanding of him through the material energies. How to understand his opulences as presented in the material world. I remember, who was it? That this 10th chapter is just simply a audio file. Krishna teaching Arjuna through sound. Whereas later on, when he shows his Virat Rupa, that's the video file. That's what Krishna is showing to Arjuna visually to help him understand. And there you'll see how Krishna talks about his Virat Rupa, and then there's a Kala Rupa also there as well. That Kalosmi Lokakshaya Krit Pravidho. That Krishna is saying that I am time. Which is quite interesting, because Prabhupada there says, time therefore is the energy of the Lord and acts in her own way by the direction of the Lord. So it may seem quite confusing. And I actually asked this question to Ganesham Prabhu, and Ganesham Prabhu gave me a very interesting answer. He was saying that just as time, the Lord says that I am time, and I am the one who causes the beginning and the end. Lokakshit pravidho. I am the one who is the cause of the destruction. But it's mentioned here that Kali is also considered to be that time potency as well. So how do you understand that? And so Ganesham Prabhu was explaining that yes, Krishna, when he says that he appears as time, that is Krishna. But the functions of time are performed by his energies. Time himself is Krishna, but the functions of times are performed by Kali. Just like sometimes when we talk about death, and we say the Yamadutas have come, death has come. But actually death hasn't come, the Yamadutas have come to give death. So in the same way, or that understanding, Kali in one sense you could say is the representative of time, therefore is non-different from time. Just as we say the spiritual master is being the representative of the Lord, should be worshipped as good as the Lord. Just like we read in Lilamrit, how when the devotees there, they're all bhaktas, they had just started their devotional service, they had moved Prabhupada from the Bowery up to the 2nd Avenue temple, matchless gifts, and at that particular point in time, Prabhupada was extremely heavy. He was always talking about chastising Mayavadis and impersonalists, and the devotees there were thinking that, wow, Swamiji must have, this Mayavadi must have really done something to Prabhupada. You know, Swamiji has something against this Mayavadi. So they didn't know what Mayavadi was, they didn't understand that it was just some person that Prabhupada was going off at. So Prabhupada would often mention that whoever thinks he's God, he is dog. And so Prabhupada would emphasize that so much, to say actually we're separate from the Lord. So one day, Kirtananda Maharaj, at that time, Keith was cooking in Prabhupada's kitchen, and Prabhupada was standing in the doorway just watching him cook. And suddenly Keith drops what he's doing and immediately looks at Swamiji, Prabhupada. And he says, Swamiji, can I become your disciple? And Prabhupada says, oh yes, why not? And so then this idea of initiation came about. And everyone started asking Prabhupada if they could get initiated. And Prabhupada even put some of the names of people who didn't even know what initiation was. They weren't even informed. Oh, I'm getting initiated. Okay, so what needs to be done? So Prabhupada just got the ball rolling. He just started it. And it's mentioned just before they were supposed to be initiated. They were initiated on Prabhupada Vyas Puja. So the day after Janmashtami they were initiated. which is Nadotsava or Prabhupada's appearance day. So the night they were having a class, and then Prabhupada told them that those who get initiated, they should worship their guru as God. That is all. Is there any questions? And Prabhupada immediately got up and walked off. And then it's mentioned, if you read Lilamrit there, it's very funny. It's mentioned there that I think Howard tells everyone, he goes, I think my mind's been blown. And then I think Umapati Prabhu, I forgot his pre-initiated name. He's saying, I think everyone's mind got blown. Because then everyone was confused, because Prabhupada was saying previously that anyone who says they're God, they're a dog. But then here Swamiji is telling us to worship. Can you see the extent of Prabhupada's preaching, how powerful it was? He made them understand or develop that barrier or protective shield from Mayavad or impersonalistic tendency. That's how powerful Prabhupada's preaching was. That they immediately got shocked. How come we can accept him as God? That's not possible. And so they were all confused and they didn't know what to do, and they were talking to each other and like this. Then they decided, let's go and ask Keith. At that time Keith was admitted to a hospital. So then they went to Keith and told Keith what happened. And Keith was thinking, and he said, why don't you just go ask Swamiji? Why are you so confused? And so then they took the courage, got courage, and went and asked Prabhupada. And then they asked Prabhupada, when you say we should worship Guru as God, and then Prabhupada immediately finishes, no, the Guru is the representative of God. Therefore, he should be worshipped as good as God. Do you understand? And then the disciples then said, yes, we understand. And then they went off. So this understanding is there, that Kali is the representative of time. And the whole reason why Kali comes into the picture now is because she mixes, she causes the amalgamation or the mixing of all of these energies, or these elements, these 23 elements of the mature creation, so that they can start functioning. And it's all under the purview of Krishna. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetuna nena kaunteya jagat viparivartate. That actually it's Krishna, the one who is managing the whole affair. But at the same time Krishna says, nachamatstani bhutani paschame yogam aishwaryam bhuta brin nacha bhutasto mamatma bhuta bhavana. That Krishna is also saying that although everything rests in me, I am not in them and they are not in me. Actually, in fact, mamatma bhuta bhavana. Actually, I am the one maintaining. I am the bhuta brit. I am the one maintaining and sustaining all living entities. But actually, I am aloof from everything. So parasya shaktir vividhaiva shuyate. That the Lord is not tainted or touched by material creation. We read in a couple of verses before that it's the Lord's prerogative, that when He enters, prerogative means it's His special priority, that He doesn't get affected by material nature. That is His prerogative. So He can come and go and not be affected. Just as the king, Prabhupada says, as the king enters the prison, does that mean the king's a criminal? No. The king is entering the prison and he can leave the prison. And when he enters the prison, Prabhupada says he can even choose to liberate whoever he wants from the prison. Just as the President of the United States also holds that function, that they can remove a particular prisoner from the prisons. Similarly, the Lord has that function. He is not affected by material creation, not affected by the laws of material creation. But still He maintains them, just to set an example, as He says in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so this is the Lord. He manifests Kali, and Kali is the one who amalgamates. And that again reiterates the point. Nothing is wanting in the creation of the Lord. If you read in Ishopanishad, the first text, Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate, there Prabhupada says everything is complete. Everything of the Lord is complete. His creation is complete. But if you think about it, how can the creation be complete? We're suffering and we're in want of happiness. We're in want of enjoyment. But that is the complete function of the material world, to teach us that actually you won't get it here. You'll only get it in the spiritual world. So nothing is really wanting in the creation of the Lord. All the potencies are there in their dormant state. And we've already seen this in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and earlier in the 5th chapter of the 3rd canto, that the Lord woke up material energy. Just like a husband wants to enjoy a wife, similarly the Lord woke up material energy so that He can create or caused the creation of material universe. I think it's later on in this third canto. I was reading Kapila Dev's instructions to Mother Devahuti on the creation of the universe, and there it's mentioned that the pradhana itself is of spiritual nature, but when the Lord agitates it with time, and when the modes of nature come, they're dormant, but they come into a sort of dormant state, that's when it becomes material. So Lord comes in contact with pradhan, which is of a spiritual nature, but when enters as time, we know as the Shambhu Tattva, that's when the material nature comes into its material effect. So material nature as an energy always exists, but manifest or unmanifest. That's the only difference. Material nature is eternal, but it's illusory in the sense that it's not permanent in its manifestation. It comes into existence and it disappears. So therefore this suspension of material creation is a natural occurrence or a recurring event that happens in the function of the universe. So therefore it's not a lacking on the Lord's part. It's the Lord showing the demigods, showing the living entities that actually nothing happens without my intervention or my sanction. In the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, against text 42, the Atava Bahunaitena verse, after explaining all the different opulences of himself, Krishna tells Arjuna that what need is there for you to know of all of these? Because it's simply by a fragment of my splendor that I'm maintaining the universe, this creation. So there, Prabhupada mentions there a couple of points. One is that everything is sustained by a fragment of himself. And Prabhupada refers to that fragment of himself is the Amsha, which is the Purusha avatars. They're simply avatars or expansions of himself. As we know, Krishna is there. Krishna then, from him comes Baladev. And then from Baladev comes the comes Vishnu, and then the Chaturvyuha, and then you have a second quadruple, the Chaturvyuha, and then from there Mahavishnu creates Karnadakashaya Vishnu, and the Karnadakashaya Vishnu, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and then from Garbhodakashaya Vishnu we have Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. So you can understand it's a part or a plenary expansion of the Lord. And that's the fragment Krishna is talking about. Just a fragment of his splendor, he's maintaining the universe. In the end of that purport, Baladev Vijayabhushan even says that actually that fragment is like the sun. The sun is so powerful, so strong, but that one sun is just a fragment of Krishna's energy. And whole universe, that energy is being maintained by a fragment of himself, or a plenary expansion of himself. Therefore I worship Lord Krishna. And it comes to this very important sentence in that purport, because after hearing about material cosmic manifestation, after hearing about the opulence of the Lord within material universe, then one questions, why do I need to learn all of these things? And Prabhupada says, if, however, one thoroughly studies the different descriptions of the opulences and expansions of Krishna's energy, then one can understand without any doubt the position of Lord Sri Krishna and can fix his mind in the worship of Krishna without deviation. So the whole goal in understanding is that we can understand without any doubt the position of Lord Sri Krishna and fix our mind in the worship of Krishna without deviation. That is the goal of understanding the opulences and expansions of Krishna's energy. Prabhupada says in that purport. It's a very crucial point. It's an important point, because that's the goal, how we can engage in Krishna's service. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayo. Prabhupada says, it begins there, engaging the mind in Krishna's service. And other place Prabhupada says you cannot understand Krishna, Atashi Krishna Namadi, na bhaved grahayam indriye. With these senses, material blunt senses, cannot understand Krishna. Sevan mukhihi jivado. But by serving Krishna, beginning with the tongue, swayam eva spurati yada, Krishna will reveal himself. But where's the impetus to engage the tongue in Krishna's service? Where's the impetus to engage the mind in Krishna's service? That impetus comes from the devotees of the Lord, not from our mundane wrangling or understanding or speculative knowledge of the Shastra. Actually, it comes from simply hearing about the Lord's manifestation from the mouth of a pure devotee. Therefore, we are very fortunate to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, if you want to take it a step further, I always like to meditate on this point, especially when I first read Srimad Bhagavatam in the 5th canto, at the later half of the 19th chapter. This is the prayers of the residents of Jambudvip. And after Narad Muni prays to Narayana Rishi on this particular Varsha, Bharata Varsha, it's mentioned there that the opulences or the benefits of the residents of Bharat Varsha, how great it is. And that's us, living in Bharat Khanda. So in this Bharat Varsha, it's mentioned there that there are so many rivers, and just by simply remembering the names of these rivers, one becomes purified. What to speak of taking bath in there, bathing there, and worshipping these rivers. And in these rivers, and then in this particular section of Jambudvip, it's mentioned there that the demigods, the living entities, the human beings living there, they are such a fortunate position that they can perform devotional service. That they have the opportunity to perform devotional service. The demigods then pray there after that when they see the residents of Bharat Varsha, they glorify them. They glorify them for their great fortune, that the demigods may also be able to join us here in Bharat Varsha and perform devotional service. And the reason why I'm explaining this is because our position in understanding devotional service is very rare. We have somehow or other, the demigods pray in that section, either because of a previous pious activities or by the Lord's specific mercy. Somehow or other, by Krishna's mercy, through Mahaprabhu's mercy, by Prabhupada's mercy, we've come to devotional service. It's very easy to become complacent. It's very easy to forget the valuable jewel in our hand. It's very easy to forget how we struggled in material existence. And so therefore in this section I thought we can talk about it, because it ties in nicely with the prayers of the demigods in the previous chapter, because the demigods were praying in the previous chapter for service to the Lord. But later on in Bhagavatam you hear that the demigods, they'll pray to the Lord, they'll pray such great prayers to the Lord, extolling His glories, but then at the end of those prayers they say, can you please give us our kingdom back? Can you please help us defeat the demons? And if you go a step back into the 4th canto, there you'll hear Dhruva Maharaj, how he, in those verses where Dhruva Maharaj meets Prishnigarbha, Vishnu, when he meets Vishnu, then he condemns himself. Why did I approach you for material desires? I was looking for broken pieces of glass, but I've obtained the jewel of your darshan, your lotus feet. And Prabhupada there in his purport, he emphasizes that when you perform devotional service, do not perform devotional service for some material gain or benefit. Do not do that. Prabhupada is very heavy in that section actually. And in fact the demigods, they reflect this understanding. They mention that by their endeavors, their strong austerities, their tapasya, their performance of yajna, their sense control, all of these sacrifices, they got the heavenly planets. But unfortunately, in those very heavenly planets, the excessive sense gratification makes them forget Krishna's lotus feet. And they're saying, what's the use of it? We performed all these activities and now we're known as demigods, very dear to the Lord. In fact, the Lord has entrusted us with different functions of the material creation. Still, we've become so absorbed in sense gratification that we forget the lotus feet of Krishna. But in Bharat Varsha, that's not the case. In Bharat Varsha, such enjoyment is not possible. So therefore, they cannot become entangled in forgetting Krishna that way. There's the opportunity that material nature gives them in the sense of distress, so they may take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet again. But the demigods, occasionally, yeah, they have the demons come and affect them, but majority of the time, no. They also mention that even in Vaikuntha Loka, even on Bharat Varsha, one can obtain Vaikuntha Loka. So they condemn the long lifespan they have in the heavenly planets. That we exist for such a long time, thousands and thousands of years. The primary demigods, they exist for Manvantara. A single Manvantara, they exist there. 71 yugas, 72 yugas. 71 yugas. They exist. Divya yugas, they exist there. So they, even though having such a long lifespan, what do they say? We cannot attain devotional service. We can't attain Vaikuntha Loka. But you see these residents of Bharatvarsha, they have such a short lifespan. For them it's kind of like seeing us as insects. You know how we see insects? They come and go within a day sometimes, couple of hours. For them it's like that. Our 1 year is their 1 day. It's kind of like nothing. You see these guys. It's mentioned when Muchukunda, when he went to the heavenly planets, even King Kakudmi, when they went to the heavenly planets or Brahmaloka, and they stayed there just for a couple of minutes. That's it. Yugas and yugas and yugas had gone. Finished. By the time they came down, everything had changed. So, for the demigods seeing from the heavenly planets Earth, specifically Bharatvarsha, it's like time goes like that. The lifespans of living entities go like that. But in that flicker or that lifespan that they see, one can immediately take to devotional service and go home back to Godhead. And for them, their lifespan, they cannot attain it. Such is the benefit of the residents of Bharatvarsha. And problem here is that they're then going on the negative now. After seeing what the residents of Bharatvarsha are doing, they go on the negative. They then say that despite having such clear sensory organs to perform Sakrit and Yajna, if they do not take to devotional service, then they're no different from forest animals and birds that are liberated, but then again become careless and again caught by the hunter. So our position is very fortunate that we can take to devotional service, but if we become complacent, we'll be like these animals, that we become liberated from the forest, from the hunter's grasp, but then again being careless, again material nature will grab us and drag us and entangle us here. Then is mentioned that Krishna also establishes demigod worship in Bharatvarsha very extensively. But he does it in such a way that everyone understands that when they worship the demigod, they're simply worshipping a limb or a part and parcel of the Lord. It's mentioned that demigods are the various limbs of the Lord in the material cosmic manifestation. When the Virat Rupa, as it will be described later on in this chapter, manifests himself, his arms are represented by the different demigods, and they perform the functions on his behalf. So when one worships the demigods, in the Vedic literature, the procedure is that one initially worships Vishnu first, because he's the beneficiary of all sacrifices. After worshipping Vishnu, then the oblations or the remnants of the prasada is then distributed to all the demigods. And that's the benefits they get from the residents of Bharatvarsha worshipping them. The demigods cannot give any benediction unless they themselves are worshipped. So when such things are performed, then they get their ability to bestow benedictions upon the living entity and perform their functions of material maintenance of the different departments of material creation. So the Lord, He allows such worship to be done because He gradually elevates the consciousness of one who performs such Vedic rituals of worshipping demigods, to the extent that the demigods mention, because the Lord is complete, He offers worshippers the benedictions they desire, even if they worship only a part of His transcendental body. You see, just by worshipping a part of the transcendental body of the Lord, one gets all the benedictions they desire. So why do you perform devotional service then? If you want to get something from Krishna, you just worship a part of His body in the form of demigod worship, and you'll get what you want. So why perform devotional service? There's something more to that, because Krishna mentions antavantu phalam tesham tad bhavati alpamedasam, that those who are less intelligent, stay stuck to worship of the demigods, because the demigods just give, they themselves are temporary and they'll give temporary results. One will not be satisfied with just simply worshipping the demigods. So therefore Krishna elevates gradually to help people understand that worshipping demigods for your own enjoyment, kankshitam karmana siddhim, that the common men, they worship the demigods for fruitive results very quickly. But they are of less intelligence, because such quick sense gratification is just momentary. It comes and goes. But if you worship Krishna, then one gets eternal benefit. Just like watering the root of the tree. By watering the root of the tree, all the branches and the leaves, they immediately become nourished. Similarly, by worshipping Krishna, naturally everyone will become satisfied and peaceful, happy. So the demigods, they give this very snippet that if you worship, just the benedictions come by worshipping Krishna's part of his body. But by worship, the residents of Bharatvarsha are given the opportunity to worship Krishna in whole, pure devotional service. But they should not become careless like liberated animals that again become caught by the hunter. They also mention a verse which is then later quoted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he speaks to Sanatana Goswami in Benares. And we talked about this previously, about how Sanatana Goswami approached the Lord and told him, why am I suffering? I do not know why I am suffering. I do not know who I am. In fact, everyone is calling me a Pandit and I am accepting what they're saying, when I don't even know why I'm suffering, why I'm going through threefold material nature, why I have to go through birth and death. So Mahaprabhu in that section, I think it's chapter 22, he explains how the living entities approach the Lord through karma, jnana, yoga and bhakti. And as he's coming to the crux of it, of how one should just give up karma, give up jnana, give up yoga and just and worship the Lord out of bhakti, that akama sarva kama va moksha kama udaridi tivrena bhakti yogen yajita purusha param, that whether one is full of desires, has no desires, or desires liberation, they should worship Krishna with full focused determination, like a laser beam. They should still continue worship. They should worship Krishna. And in that section, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately, verse after that, he says that, but unfortunately, people, they worship Krishna, perform devotional service, and due to contamination with the material nature, they desire some material benefit from Krishna. And so in text 38, Mahaprabhu says, Krishna says, if one engages in my transcendental loving service, but at the same time wants the opulence of material enjoyment, he is very, very foolish. Indeed, he is just like a person who gives up ambrosia to drink poison. Text 39, since I am very intelligent, this is Krishna speaking, since I am very intelligent, why should I give this fool material prosperity? Instead, I shall induce him to take the nectar of the shelter of my lotus feet and make him forget illusory material enjoyment. And this is the text that he quotes from what the demigods are praying, or rather saying to the while seeing the residents of Bharatvarsha. Whenever Krishna is requested to fulfill one's desire, he undoubtedly does so, but he does not award anything which, after being enjoyed, will cause one to petition him again and again to fulfill further desires. When one has other desires but engages in the Lord's service, Krishna forcibly gives one shelter at his lotus feet, where one will forget all other desires. And then after this, the demigods mention that Krishna is so, he looks out for the devotees of Bharatvarsha so much that he personally comes to Bharatvarsha to enact his pastimes, to attract the living entities to go back to Godhead. So, the mood of devotional service should be to please Krishna, to satisfy Krishna. That is the goal of devotional service. Just simply for Krishna's senses, nothing else, not for our own. And the idea of serving Krishna means that whatever stage we're at, we may be full of desires, we may have no desires, we may even desire liberation, we should still engage in Krishna's service. But how to engage in Krishna's service? What is the impetus if we're so desirous of material enjoyment, how is it that Krishna forcibly gives shelter at his lotus feet? Actually, Krishna doesn't personally do it. Krishna sends his devotees. That without the dust, bathing in the dust of the lotus feet of the devotee, Prahlad Maharaj says, it's not possible to get Krishna's mercy. It's not possible to become Krishna consciousness unless getting the mercy or the favor of the devotee. It's mentioned twice in Bhagavatam, this particular Rajobhishekam. One, when Prahlad Maharaj is telling his father, when his father says, who has told you all these things? Who has taught you all of these things? Where from this knowledge have you got? Have you got all this knowledge? Then Prahlad Maharaj says, actually, from the same place you have got your... I'm mixing up both of the conversations. Anyway, so Prahlad Maharaj is telling him that actually by your own endeavor and by others' endeavor, you cannot become Krishna conscious. Rather, by taking shelter of the pure devotee and bathing the dust of his lotus feet, you'll be able to become Krishna conscious. And again, Rahugana Maharaj, when he's talking to Jadabharat, again mentions this point, that it's not possible to become freed from material existence unless one gets the shelter of the devotee of Krishna. So Krishna forcibly gives shelter, how? By sending his devotees, sending his personal entourage, sending his personal associates to come and reclaim the fallen conditioned souls by preaching to them about Krishna consciousness. So what is it that they're preaching Krishna consciousness? Vidura is an example of the Lord sending a devotee to preach. Because who is Vidura? Vidura is Yamaraj, who got cursed by Mandavya Muni. Yamaraj is pure devotee of the Lord. Yamaraj is a Mahajan. Why he got cursed? Because Yamaraj at one point, while performing his functions of chastising the living entities, desired that how nice it would be to preach the glories of the Lord. Here I am just chastising these rascals. What would it be like to go out and preach? So then the Lord arranged the situation that Mandavya Muni cursed Yamaraj, and Yamaraj took the form of Vidura and started preaching Krishna consciousness in that life. And this is Vidura's mercy upon us, that he's inquiring from Maitreya, because as we read in the beginning of this previous chapter, that he could have just gone ahead and asked, tell me Krishna Lila, tell me about the pastimes of Krishna. But actually out of his mercy and humility, he's given us the opportunity to understand about Krishna, just so that we can understand without any doubt the position of Lord Shri Krishna, and then fix our mind in the worship of Krishna without deviation. So the creation of material existence, or the universal creation, happens by the mercy of Krishna, by the direct action of Krishna, and then later by his plenary expansions. But it doesn't happen without him. No transformation in the material cosmic manifestation happens without the sanction of the Lord. Prabhupada quotes, he often says, not even a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. So the point here of this section is to understand the greatness of Krishna. How simply by a fragment of himself, of his splendor, a plenary expansion of his expansion, he is still maintaining this universe, but he's still aloof from it, not affected by it. And by understanding this, how everything is dependent on Krishna, then we can remove the doubts within our mind. Ashamshaya samagram mam yata jnasasi takshinu. Just simply by hearing from the devotee of Bhagavad Gita Srimad Bhagavatam about the glories of the Lord, one can immediately then take shelter of the Lord very easily. Because then the doubts in the mind is immediately cut. And one is able to then take full shelter of the Lord. And that only happens by the mercy of the devotees, as the demigod prays. So this is our position. Our position is very fortunate. The time is also very fortunate. We are very fortunate living entities to get devotional service, especially during this golden age of Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. And it is our duty to then engage our senses in Krishna's service, beginning with Tatshrinu, simply by hearing. And of course engaging the tongue in Krishna's service by taking prasadam, chanting Hare Krishna. That is also there. So, the Lord enters into material universe with Goddess Kali, and she is the one who amalgamates everything under his direction. And I'll end with this. Prabhupada says, the wonderful activities of material nature are due to Lord Krishna, and thus he is the final cause or the ultimate cause of all causes. Sarva karana karanam. Okay, so I'll end here. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much for listening to Srimad Bhagavatam today. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki jai. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Nithai Gaur Premanande.